Joining us on the WCRD hotline is IMS pit reporter and Ball State alum Nick Yeoman. Nick, how are you doing?
Hey, Brandon, Nathan, I'm pretty good, guys. All things considered, appreciate you having me on the show.
All right, well, first off, you are a pit reporter for the IMS radio network, and you were in Las Vegas on Sunday. Can you describe that moment when the wreck went down from your perspective?
Well, it's tough. I mean, I was on pit lane, and obviously, if you know the layout of Las Vegas Motor Speedway, the accident happened in turn 2, and immediately everybody's attention focused to, some of the video boards and the monitors that were set up for fans on the front straightaway. And boy, it was just, I mean, I've never, racetracks are just naturally loud places. You've got cars buzzing around those places like Las Vegas at 225 all the time. And really the sense of silence that fell across Las Vegas was probably something I'll never forget. And then obviously, the events that led up for the next hour and a half with cleaning the track and hearing about Dan. And of course, it was tough for me because I am a race fan at heart, and to have to kind of put that business face on with the radio network, and the main goal was to try to get updates and find out what had happened to Dan was very tough because there were a lot of emotional people at the racetrack, and it was just a tough time for everybody. So yeah, it was a moment that I've never had to experience anything like this. I've only been with the network for about a year and a half, going on 2 years now. And unfortunately, it's the reality of auto racing that you can make these cars as safe as you can, but at the end of the day, at 225 miles per hour, things go wrong. And it's something that I've never had to deal with before, covering the death of a driver. It's something that I hope I'll never have to deal with again, but the reality is it does happen, and there's just really nothing that can prepare you for it.
When the red flag was dropped and the drivers were pulling into pit road, what was their initial reaction about the wreck before they heard about Dan Wheldon?
Well, and there were a lot of, the thing is, I mean, the wreck happened, and obviously, they throw the yellow flag and then eventually the red, so everybody went around the track, at least the cars that weren't involved with the accident. Everybody was able to go around the track at least once. They might have gone through twice, I can't remember. But we were able to catch up with a few drivers, Dario Franchitti, Tony Kanaan, Davey Hamilton, who works as our IMS driver analyst for races that he doesn't compete in. And everybody just described it as it looked like a war field with just debris and carbon fiber littered everywhere. So word spread pretty quickly about that Dan was the one that was hurt the most, and that obviously a lot of concern for him. And I immediately made my way back to the medical center, waiting on word and to catch up with some drivers that were involved with the accident. And I talked to Alex Lloyd, we talked to Paul Tracy, and I think when I really knew that something was really wrong was when I talked to Paul Tracy, because if you know anything about the Eyes on IndyCar series and the drivers, you know that Paul Tracy is one of these, he's a real no-nonsense. He speaks his mind. He's very blunt about things. And when you saw Paul Tracy, when we talked to him, and he said, hey, we were in the medical center, and as soon as they brought Dan in, they rushed us out. And Paul was visibly, I mean, he was shaken. He was a mess, and you could just kind of tell that something wasn't good. So I think word spread quickly along for the drivers on pit lane, and then obviously everyone's concern was the well-being of Dan.
Jump ahead 2 hours after the red flag was dropped, and word starts trickling down about his death. How were drivers reacting at that point?
It was complete devastation. Dan is one of those drivers that, everyone respects. You heard a lot of people talking the last couple of days about that smile and that grin that, that sheepish grin that he had. And it was a huge blow to everyone. And I don't blame the drivers one bit for not wanting to hop back in those race cars and compete at those speeds on that given day. It was, it was a tough moment to take. I mean, walking down and seeing drivers like Dario Franchitti emotionally and visibly upset, and Danica Patrick broke down, and everybody. It was just everybody was a mess, man. And that 5-lap tribute was really something special. But I think I kind of knew about a half hour after the accident. I had kind of heard the rumors and I had got information. Of course, in that situation as a reporter, you don't report anything until it's confirmed. So, you kind of knew, and then it was just the next hour until it was announced was just kind of playing the waiting game and preparing yourself for it. But it hit everybody really, really hard in the paddock, the drivers, the crew members. The drivers actually had a drivers meeting to decide if they wanted to go out and race, and when they decided they weren't going to, the drivers then made their way out onto pit lane, and they talked with each of their crews and told them the news, and everybody, a lot of hugs, a lot of tears, and really a lot of emotion down there on pit lane.
Put yourself in Dario Franchitti's shoes for a second, and how do you think he will view this championship compared to past championships?
It's incredibly bittersweet. I don't know, and here's the bigger thing, Brandon. I don't know if you're Dario Franchitti. He's in his 30s. Looking forward, what more does a guy like Dario Franchitti have to accomplish? He's got 4 IZOD IndyCar Series championships now, 2 Indianapolis 500 wins. You've got to wonder, and now he's lost, a best friend. You've got to wonder, boy, does this guy have any reason to come back and even run in the IZOD IndyCar Series? At the same time, he's absolutely at the top of his game and has won the last 4 in a row, really, if you take out the year that he left and he raced in NASCAR for a little bit. So it's just horrible that it happened in the last race, because it was supposed to be a time to celebrate either Dario or Will Power wrapping up a championship, and obviously the championship banquet was canceled on Monday, and obviously everybody's made their way back to Indianapolis or Charlotte or Florida or wherever they're at, and it's just been a tough time. I can't imagine. I don't know how Dario Franchitti could even get excited about winning a championship when he loses someone as close as he was to Dan Wheldon. It's just a tough situation for him and everybody at that Target Chip Ganassi team.
How would you describe Dan Wheldon's lasting legacy on the IndyCar Series?
You know what? It's not as much with the IndyCar Series. It is with Memorial Day weekend at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway in the 500. That place, you look at Dan's record. This past May, when they celebrated the 100-year anniversary, they came out with that greatest 33 list, and really it was fans and riders and TV personalities and everybody were able to vote on this, and I believe the Indy Star and a couple other publications put together their list of the greatest 33 drivers in the 100-year anniversary of the Indianapolis 500, and Dan Wheldon was left off that list, and he was one of those names that everybody said, are you serious? Dan Wheldon's been a pretty good race car driver. Of course, he only had 1 win at the time, and as we know, 6 months ago, he capped off and won that incredible win, with J.R. Hildebrand getting into the wall on the final lap. And you look at what Dan Wheldon's done at the Indianapolis 500, 2 wins. He had a couple second-place finishes, a third, a fourth. 6 of his 9 starts at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, he finished in the top 4. It's absolutely remarkable. But I think that lasting legacy is that smile and his love for the Speedway. You guys grow up in this area just like I did. The month of May at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway is truly something special. And there's a lot of people around here, there's a lot of people around the United States that don't really get it. And Dan's from England, and it would be completely understandable if he was one of those guys that would come to the Speedway, treat it as another race, would really rather be racing in Formula One or something like that. But that wasn't the case with Dan. A lot of people have pointed out that Dan didn't go through very many interviews without mentioning that the Indianapolis 500 was the greatest race in the world. So I think that's where it hits the hardest is and his lasting legacy is what he did at Indy and how much he respected that race. And boy, Brandon, to be honest with you, I don't even know what it's going to be like next May to go back to that track and have to relive Dan Wheldon winning that race a year ago. It's going to be a tough time, but his lasting legacy will certainly be as a true champion and a champion at the greatest race course in the world in Indianapolis.
Nick, you're around racing a lot. You've been around racing a lot. And Dan Wheldon at that fact. So what is one of your fondest memories of Dan Wheldon?
Boy, I think my fondest memory, it may not be a personal one that I shared with them because, I'm not going to sit here and say, we were best of friends. I've only worked with the network for about a year and a half, so I knew Dan. I considered him a friend, but of course I didn't have a lot of the lasting memories like a lot of other people have on a personal basis for him. But just after he won that 500. And you've seen a lot of pictures pop up here in the last couple of days after his death. The pictures of he and his two young sons with his wife after winning the Indianapolis 500 6 months ago. For all accounts, everybody talked about how Dan had really kind of maybe not turned his life around, but in the sense he'd become a real family man, and he had two kids and loved those two kids so much. So it's probably the thing that hurts the most, to know that the two young kids don't have their father anymore. But that's probably my lasting memory, is that big grin on Dan Wheldon's face, that awesome-looking white and orange William Rass 98 car that I think is going to go down as one of the coolest-looking cars and one of the most memorable winning cars in the history of the Indianapolis 500, and then ultimately the bond that he shared with his two sons, albeit very short here on Earth.
Hey, Nick, thank you for calling in. I know this has been a tough few days for you and the entire racing community, but thank you for sharing your thoughts with us.
Hey, not a problem, man. It's I think the best way for a lot of people that love the sport to get over it and to move on is to talk about it. So it's been great to join you, and I hope you guys keep up the good work.
All right, thanks, man.